were discussing the concerns of management by objectives, and to take the discussion forward, we were trying to understand what are the planning tools which can be used to bring about change in an organization using the principles of management by objectives. And I had spent some time with you trying to explain to you how the objective of an institution or an organization can vary within the same profession. And I talked of education, I talked of corporates, I talked of individuals, and usually giving an illustration of all three categories, try to explain to you what objectives have to do with going around one's daily activities. Now, once the objectives are clear, then everything else falls into position. And what is everything else? It's the control tools, the systems, the structures, the processes. This is the great contribution of Renesas Lec-26. He said there must be internal consistency within an organization. For example, if you have an authoritative model running an organization, you can't practice open communication. It's like trying to drive a car in fourth gear without pressing the accelerator, the car will jam. Or trying to ride a scooter in fourth gear with not turning on the speed at all. So, to run an organization smoothly, there must be internal systemic consistency, which is what makes Renesas Lec-26 such a celebrated person in organization management. We did a critique of Renesas Lec-26, and the critique is valid too. But a critique does not mean running down a person. A critique means evaluating a position, a person, and then you give him credit where it's due. You show how things have changed since he worked, because he made a contribution in the context of his times, but the times have changed. But this part of Renesas Lec-26's contribution has not been improved upon. And he made a very fundamental point in running of organizations, be it control, be it structure, be it processes, be it reward, be it punishment, be it communication, whatever. What are the different aspects of running an organization? They must be internally consistent if the organization is to work. So, if you are managing by objectives, that cascades down all the dimensions. Your control mechanisms will have to be consistent with the objectives. Why do you implement a rule? Very simple. Take the most pedestrian example of its all, coming on time. You want to be philosophical, and remember in the preceding session we also took a philosophical take on these issues. Why must you come in time? Why can't I come when I want? For the simple reason that you are here to study, and the control mechanism determines that you must put that as your first priority, and you must be there in time, because your quality of takeaway will be impaired if you are not there for the full session. However, if you have a club and if you are having a birthday party, what's discipline about? And mind you, discipline is needed even there, a different kind of a discipline. Isn't it common courtesy that if you go to a birthday party, you should be there when the cake is cut? Or you arrive like a VIP, a misplaced VIP of course, after the cake is cut, and the first thing you say is, hey, where is my cake? So, you pick up the cake, you gobble it up and say, bye, ta-da, see you, I have had my cake, happy birthday. Is that what anyone does? So, Peter Drucker was making a very simple proposition: understand the objectives and then design your systems according to the objectives. Obviously, you don't run a birthday party the way you run a class, and you don't run a class the way you run a birthday party. And get to a corporate example, you don't run a shop floor the way you run an R&D institution, and you don't run an R&D institution the way you run a shop floor. A shop floor by design, by conscious choice, must be very predictable, specific, with everything falling in place. If you run an R&D division which is by design specific, predictable, falling in place, then why do you want an R&D division anyhow to begin with? So, the second takeaway on the subject is, no matter what is it that you do, there must be internal consistency. Now, these are not the words Peter Drucker would ever use. All he would say is, if you are clear on the objectives, then design your other systems of the organization consistent with those objectives, and I have just given you examples to show what it means. Management by objectives occurs when a manager defines responsibilities and expectations collaboratively with subordinates, sets targets, dates and interim checkpoints, evaluates, provides feedback. Now, if you look at this definition, no matter how you read it, defining responsibilities, expectations, collaborations with subordinates, setting targets, interim checkpoints, it is merely detailing what has already been said and well understood. In other words, Mr. Leonard and Mr. Hilbert in 2004 made really no contribution other than paraphrase. Who needs a paraphrase? It is like saying when you are in love, you coo small little nothings in the ear, never bite them. You carry flowers, you take the person out for dinners and drinks, you say the nicest things. That is being in love. Baba, if you have to be explained what is being in love and coo into the ear and not bite them, then you never understood what love is about. The long and short of it is, forget the frivolousness of the example, but ultimately life is a testimony that frivolity is recalled, seriousness is forgotten. So, I do not think there is much contribution in this, but then it is very important in the given the day and the age in which we live in to quote Mr. Leonard, to quote Mr. Hilbert, especially if you are going to face an interview and say, sir, you know, we learnt a lot of things in organization management. We were also told what Mr. Hilbert said. Oh, really? What did Mr. Hilbert say? Oh, Mr. Hilbert said that responsibilities, expectations, collaboration with the subordinate. Oh, enough, enough. I understand. I understand. He understands nothing. Again, jokes apart. Learn of the different explanations given by people, but use only the ones which are relevant. That is the more serious point I am trying to make. The essence of MBO is a process of joint goal setting between a supervisor and a subordinate, self-direction, evaluation to effect change in participative and collaborative fashion. This is MBO at work. You can't have an objective as a secret. An objective must be shared widely. Now, some preliminary definitions. What is a goal? Goals are defined as being relatively few and long term in their focus. It must be specific and realistic. What is an action plan? It specifies the methods. Now, please note this, because I get a lot of queries on what is an action plan. An action plan deals with methods, activities and resources required to accomplish a goal. So, the keywords are methods, activities, resources. The objectives are defined as being relatively more numerous and short term in their focus. So, again a question asked is, what is the difference between goal and objectives? So, do not come back to questions which have been already answered there. FQAs does not mean you ask the lesson to be rerun. FQA means follow up questions which have arisen out of the text. So, get the difference between goals and objectives, and if you read this and if you read this, you will get the difference between goals and objectives. They must be precise and small in number. Then there is the Marquardt criteria. Goal means measurable, attainable, consistency with company goals, demanding, under the control of the individual, and deadlined. There is for you to see, there is for you to understand, there is for you to note, and there is for you to use to confuse others. By all means, use it and confuse others. Do not use it to confuse yourself. And not to confuse yourself, it is important for you to understand. Again, I hope you get the light-hearted vein in which I am talking. Otherwise, you would say, my God, why does he want to confuse me? I do not want to confuse you. What I am trying to tell you is, these acronyms are not standard acronyms. Now, this is putting it seriously. These acronyms are not standard acronyms. These are memory aids. Measurable, attainable, consistency, demanding, under the control of individual, and deadlined. What questions to ask before implementing an MBA system? What is the specific change desired? Always be clear on what your objective is supposed to fulfill. Why do I want to intervene? What are the objectives of the organization? What is the time frame by which these objectives can be achieved? Can you measure or gauge how well you have achieved your objectives? Can objectives drive change? The answer is intelligent choice of objectives does drive change. In other words, you can bring about a change by getting an organization back to the objectives for which it was created. That is how management by objectives again becomes an actionable viewpoint. Why a what and not a how approach? No need for imposing directives. Promoting employee motivation, sense of self-worth and involvement encourages participative problem solving and decision making. What is the result? The change is enduring because the employees buy into the process. Now, this is true. If you want to make an impact which is enduring, if you want to make an impact which stays, it is important to get people to believe it. It is important to get people to develop ownership, which they will not unless they have tried it, tested it, and found it to work. In 2004 study, Google India found that through the company and brilliant engineers working for them, they tended to be loners, temperamental, and work alone rather than in teams or groups. It was found many thought it a slight to their pride to ask another for help and share resources, leading to the wastage of time and duplication of effort. The company seeking to get people to work more collaboratively than individually gave its people objectives for a new project in such a way that they could not achieve it alone. An illustration of how you design a system where it becomes inherent to deal with others. And your throughput processes are so intensely dependent upon the inputs that you get, that you need the information from some place, you need the materials from some place, you need the energy from another place, you need a certain degree of information on the volumes which you want to produce, that you are constantly in need of somebody. So, where people are hypersensitive and loners who believe they are great achievers, it is best to design a system where mutual dependency becomes inherent. And for doing that, management by objectives is a good way of doing it. There are no explicit requirements to work together, but people soon found that the only way to succeed was to collaborate. This MBO approach had the inherent advantage of maintaining employee motivation, promoting a sense of involvement, creativity, while a more authoritarian approach of imposing guidelines, enforcing people to work in groups to bring about the same change might have backfired by bruising egos and encouraging rebellious tendencies. Now, do not ask me for a checklist of conditions under which MBO will work and MBO will not work. That is not how diagnosis is done. You have to use your clinical sense. But yes, management by objectives helps to impersonalize the situation and create a situation which is best suited for teamwork. Studies in implementation of the MBA system. This slide talks of 6 steps. Formulate the long-term goals of the organization. And believe me, this is more complicated than it sounds. For those of you who are field oriented, and all of you should be field oriented, merely check out in any organization how many of them know the objectives of their organization. That will be a process of education. You walk into any organization and ask them, what are the objectives of your organization? Objectives of your organization? I don't know. I come here, I do my work, I go home. And the funny thing is, he will feel proud about it. He says, I don't know. And he said, no, in a way in which how silly can you be? You want me to know the objectives? Why should I know the objectives? And then if he is from a hi-fi school, he will say, I don't care. Of course you don't care. You never learned how to care, sweetheart. You never learned. Oh, damn it, man. I come to work, do my job, correct my salary, and I go home. So you should turn around and say, good luck. That's not what it is about. What it is about is involvement. And you can't have an involvement unless you believe in the objectives that you are there. If you don't care, then you don't worry about quality. Develop specific and measurable organizational objectives. This is very important. People flake off objectives because they don't understand it. It's not measurable. You know, what kind of objectives is this? We believe in being the best in the world. Now, please tell me, define me what is the best in the world. These days, everyone is spawning world-class institutions. Nobody wants less than world-class institutions. What is world-class? World-class means also always post-industrial West. You are not talking of a small nation of 34,000 people whose name also you don't know. That is not world class. Again, my repeated urgings to you, move away from stereotyped statements. They will prevent you from learning management. You must develop departmental objectives. This is very important. Not must only the organization but have objectives, but also the department must have objectives. And the departmental objectives cannot be different from the organizational objectives. There must be again a relationship, and the relationship between the objectives of a smaller unit and a larger organization will be the smaller unit would be a subset of the larger set of objectives. Set group and individual goals and responsibilities by mutual agreement and collaboration. This can always be done. Formulate and implement action plans, performance reviews and feedbacks. Now, this is again where hierarchy comes in and debate starts, and there is a lot of agreement and much disagreement. How do you provide performance review? Whose job is it to provide performance review? 360 degrees, 90 degrees, no degrees. Why must the superior always evaluate the subordinate? Why not the subordinate the superior? And if they can evaluate each other, then why can't you evaluate each other at the peer level? For heaven's sake, can we do anything else but evaluation all the time? So, there are no standard answers to this. Sometimes supervisor should be supervising? What? There must be areas in which the supervisor must evaluate. It is natural for the supervisor to evaluate the competency of the subordinate at the task, because presumably he is senior, presumably he knows better, presumably he has better awareness of the profession, but the subordinate will evaluate whether the instructions were clear. So, to say it is 360 degrees or whatever degree you want, or whatever be the colorful language you want to use, ultimately performance evaluation is as important as performance feedback, and it is a factor of which aspect of performance you are looking at. Get the principle right. Therefore, again management by objectives becomes a very important concept. You assess with reference to the objectives, and you assess not only with reference to the objectives, the content of the assessment will be decided by what purpose it is supposed to serve. Remember, the purpose, the word purpose is the same as objectives. Again, management by objectives. Now, can individual needs be obstacle to organizational change? Well, let me take you to International Handbook of Management by Objectives by Hans Wilhelrich. Now, that is a name which sounds very scholarly, very profound, much respected. Therefore, you must read organizational needs and demands, individual needs and career goals. There is a potential conflict between the organization and the individual, and his ideas are listed here. May I urge you to take a couple of minutes off to read through this. Why does this happen? Many incorrectly implement MBO programs, focus on demands of the organizations only, and do not pay sufficient attention to the needs of individuals and careers. And this chart shows how focusing on organizational needs and demands is important, and side by side focusing on individual needs and career goals is important. Please read through these 7 carefully. Now, whether you are going through the left hand column or the right hand column, please understand that a smoothly working organization will integrate the organizational goals with the individual goals, which is why you must choose your organization very carefully. If you are earning an organization just because of its brand name, or just because of the perks, or just because it will get you abroad, or whatever you are choosing, these are not professional reasons. These are important reasons, but come lower down into the hierarchy. First of all, you must see a competency fit. Some people simply can't work in a manufacturing organization. Some people can't work in a trading organization. Some people can't work in an educational institution. Some people can't work in an R&D institution. It is not just a question of salary. In the ultimate analysis, when you have crossed 40, you will realize life satisfaction does not come just out of money, which it does not just come out of brand names, which it does, but it comes out of job satisfaction, ability and opportunity to do a job well. Ability and opportunity to do a job well. And the same caution has to be exercised by the organization. When they recruit people, they must recruit people with a very clear-cut objective of assessing whether their personal objectives meet the objectives of the organization which they run. One of the biggest problems people find after joining an organization are the working hours. What is the great advantage of collecting all that huge salary when you have no time to enjoy it in? And both you and your wife, great achievers, oh, you met in Singapore while going around that giant wheel, she was great, you were great. One was working for one multinational, another was for working for another multinational. Life sounded so cool till you got married and you discovered one was coming home at 11 o'clock, the other was coming home at 2 o'clock in the morning. And then one was flying away on Mondays, Wednesdays and Thursdays, the other one was flying around on Tuesdays, Fridays and Saturdays. Oh, great jet setters. One was going to China, the other was going to Adelaide. And you came back from Adelaide, you were going to Chicago. What do you get out of going to Chicago? I don't understand, quite frankly. Just the sheer thrill of hopping into an aircraft and hopping out of an aircraft. If that's what you think life is about, then become a cabin crew. That's the best. You will be forever hopping into an aircraft and hopping out of an aircraft. God bless everyone. I have no problem. So it is just that I get very confused at times by the kind of choices people exercise. To which one of my friends said, that entirely is your problem. Now, high degree of integration of organizational demands and individual needs. The same thing is put down in a diagrammatic form. Organizational demands, individual needs, high degree of integration, and this is the domain of tranquility. What is the result? A low degree of integration of individual needs and organizational demands leads to employee performing at the minimum acceptable level. Take it from me, it does not take too much to keep a job, but it takes hell of a lot to keep happy. Remember that as another takeaway from this session. It does not take too much to keep a job, but it takes hell of a lot to stay happy. After all, what do you have to do to keep a job? A minimal level of performance and yes-manship to the boss. You will even get a promotion. And you are not interested in the boss. What you are interested in is the lollies that he gives you. Just as your subordinate is not interested in you, he is interested in the lollies that you give him. So it's an endless chain. What is the learning? For the change processes to be effective, MBA objectives must be carefully chosen to ensure organizational needs are met, but not by totally ignoring the employee needs. This is where the IR concept of employee welfare comes in. And all enlightened organizations have a singular concept of employee welfare. And it covers everything from a creche, a daycare center, to providing workout facilities on premises. Some prerequisites for success of an MBA system. Proactive support of the senior management and leadership in implementation of the MBA system. Remember, in management, nothing gets done without the support of your superior. If MBO is to be successful at bringing about the permanent change, it must start at the top of the organization. Top managers must communicate why they have adopted an MBO and what they think it will do, and that they are committed to it. Employees must be educated about what MBO is and what their role in it will be. So, to put it briefly, an MBO becomes a framework of reference for people positioning themselves in an organization. Let me repeat that just in case you lost me on the first round. The MBO becomes a frame of reference which can be used by people for positioning themselves in the organization. MBO requires time in order to work effectively. If people are given time to get used to using an MBO system and use it properly for planning and controlling change, not for rewards or comparative evaluation, the system can serve any size organization well. In other words, MBO is an effectiveness intervention. It is not a tool for reward and punishment. Now, it does not follow therefore that reward and punishment is irrelevant. Reward and punishment is also relevant, but the indicators of deciding what to reward and what to punish will be different from the instruments of an MBO. Then there are the human side issues. People can even companies the world over set goals every year, but don't follow them through to completion. It must be ensured that this does not happen. No, this is easier said than done. It must be ensured. You must ensure. How do you ensure anything in life? I don't know. After you have made all the promises, you will forget. Take it from me. You will forget her birthday. And she will set you on fire. Happens to everyone. People even forget their marriage anniversaries, not because they marry many times, but because you can forget what is there. How do you ensure? You can only attempt to ensure. And the other side is, while judging somebody for non-conformity, please realize it can also happen to you. So, you should never punish on the first round. If you punish on the first round, you are a fool. Don't even punish on the second round, because there is always the yellow light between the green light and the red light. Caution. But if you don't penalize on the third mistake, you are an idiot. You shouldn't be there. You don't know how to run an organization. You punish one person for one mistake, you have closed the door of 10 other mistakes. And you condone the third time the same mistake in one person, the message goes throughout the organization. Doesn't matter, that is the way it is here. And it sounds so much better in English than in English. Indians think they speak English, nobody else but they understand their own English. With due apologies. Where in the world do you say thank you for congratulations? In India, when we want to congratulate, we say thank you. Sorry? Thank you for becoming the chief boss. But why do you say thank you? Sir, well done, well done. Oh, you mean congratulations? I meant congratulations. We have a strange vocabulary. But then, of course, things foreign give a lot of status in India, and we are a very status bound society. Remember our discussion on culture. It also affects MBO. If you talk too seriously about MBO, another person who is there just making a living would say, what's your problem? You own this organization. What is it to you? Go do your own job. Any number of times people go through training programs, mercifully not always, and you go back to report to your superior, he will say, oh, you have come back from a training program, very good. What did you learn? Sir, a lot of effectiveness tools. Good, now get back to work as always. And why did you go to a training program? Let it be, I know better, you carry on. Now, this is not MBO by objectives. In other words, management by objectives is a dynamic concept. It is in matters big and small, and it is always open to accept new inputs. What an MBO system is and what an MBO system is not. Firstly, an MBO is an effective strategic planning and control system for effective change. It is not an effective performance evaluation and reward system. I have already explained this. Planning tool, what tasks are to be done to bring about the change in an organization can be worked out in the framework of reference of management by objectives. Objectives are set for coming year or some specific time frame and then updated and reviewed on a quarterly, monthly and weekly basis. During analysis and review of a team, the emphasis must be on a supportive approach. In other words, MBO by design develops teamwork. Can it be a control tool by ensuring people complete assigned tasks in time frame allotted? Yes. Objectives become a roadmap and how to get to a clearly defined distant target. By continually checking progress about the path of accomplishments at regular intervals. This is the monitoring system. Teams and people can easily get back on the right road when they see that they have wandered. In other words, search for objectives keeps the issues alive. It becomes like a compass. You lose your way, you find out by how much you have strayed and you get back to where you are supposed to be. If a manager uses MBA to evaluate a team or salesperson's performance for the purpose of making a salary or compensation decision, then MBO completely loses its effectiveness, because remember, it is meant to decide action in aid of effectiveness, and it cannot be a system which differentiates between people. It should be a system which integrates people. When teams and salespersons realize that they are going to be rewarded on the basis of objectives, they tend to negotiate to set them aside, to set them on the low side. This is another reason why it cannot be a process of reward and punishment, because then you are not encouraging them to set high targets. They know that lollies will come when those targets are met. The easiest objectives are chosen, not the right objectives to bring about the intended change. Please note this very carefully. The easiest objectives are chosen, not the right objectives. What an MBA system is and what is an MBA system is not can be brought to a conclusion by saying second MBO is a bottom up process oriented, team oriented planning system, not a top down command and control system. Therefore, the key words are it is a bottom up process oriented, team oriented planning system, not a top down command model. People in the smallest units, usually teams, initiate a set of written performance objectives. The team objectives should be action oriented. What action do we need to take to improve what we do our jobs? The objectives are discussed by associates among themselves and in managing teams, followed by agreements on objectives to which everyone then becomes committed. Therefore, discussion is a way of ensuring collective acceptance of the objectives, and that is a great strength of an MBO. Periodic review by team itself to determine to what extent the objectives have been met or exceeded. It communicates results to management. MBO is best used as a system for helping people in department or team plan their objectives to effect the desired change. Top management can use a system with department heads, and department heads can use the system with their teams and associates. So, this is what I call the cascading effect. I would like to conclude this discussion by a brief reference to advantages of MBO as a change driver. MBO programs continuously emphasize what should be done in an organization to achieve the desired organization change. So, what should be done becomes the objective. Where you want to get is the process. MBO process secures employee commitment to attaining organizational goals. Organization creates powerful motivational systems for the employees by adopting MBO, making change more enduring. Remember, we are talking of refreezing change. We began the study by unfreezing. We are concluding the sequence by talking of refreezing, and that is where we bring it to an end with a reference to the fact that process of discussion and collaboration communication is greatly enhanced. It focuses attention on appropriate goals, and MBO facilitates controls through periodic development and subsequent evaluation of individual goals and plans. So, just as the organization grows, so must also the individual. What are the limitations of MBO as a change driver? An MBO system can have detrimental effect if implemented badly. Individual managers may become too focused on their own objectives. These are both dangers to avoid. The development of objectives can be time consuming, leaving both managers and employees less time in which they do their actual work. Elaborate written goals can be counterproductive. In other words, to put it very simply, if you want to pursue management by objectives carefully, you better follow the middle path. Lack of top management support after deciding on using it reduces its effectiveness as a tool for organizational change. Some managers will not and cannot sit down and work out goals with their subordinates, and they will assign and suggest goals, and that is to be avoided, because this will result in resentment. In other words, like any other system, MBO has its strengths, has its weaknesses, and has to be carefully implemented if it is to work at all.